Drugs. Drugs are a dime a dozen. Most people you will meet in your life will have at least admitted at least once to doing drugs in their life. Hell, I do drugs. You won't catch me doing the hard stuff, mind you. You won't catch a needle in my arm. Hell, you probably do drugs, and you probably don't even realize you're doing drugs. Nevertheless, drugs are everywhere. You could probably walk down the street right now, and if you knew where to look, you could very easily find it. Whether it's illegal, legal, prescription, mixed in a bathtub with nefarious chemicals, opiates, amphetamines, uppers, downers, lefties, righties, huffing paint out of a brown paper bag. Point is, it is super common, pretty much no matter where you go, to find yourself a quick fix. Unless you're one of those rare individuals who have managed to stay straight edge your entire life, which probably means you have the willpower of a saint. Or you lead a very, very boring life. Joking aside, you may be wondering what the hell the point of all this is. Well, if you've had any keen interest or have consumed your own fair share of narcotics in the day, you probably are more than well aware of certain drugs. Certain drugs that probably scare the hell out of you. Drugs you probably wouldn't even consider touching because you either know of certain people, have had friends that's consumed them, or even family that has consumed them and have heard of what it's done to their lives or seen what it's done to them, or just heard horror stories of the effects these drugs can have on an individual and at worst, how it affects their friends and family around them. Hell, you may have even thought of some drugs right now as I was talking about that. A few things like coke, crack, meth, heroin, or the new kid on the block, fentanyl. Drugs that are so completely dangerous that the most normal functioning people wouldn't even consider doing it in their lifetime. Some people, though, are not so lucky. If you've talked to someone who was homeless or is homeless, or you knew someone who did those kind of drugs, but then managed to come back from it and go straight edge, would tell you that when all feels hopeless and you're at your lowest moment, it becomes a more easy of a decision to make to put something that horrible in your system if it means forgetting your problems for at least a little while. But then there are those drugs. Drugs that are so horrifying and deadly that even heroin addicts would tell you to steer clear of it. In this video, I'm going to be talking about drugs so deadly that if anyone was to take it, it would literally eat you from the inside out. A drug that turns people into living zombies. Prepare your stomachs. This isn't going to be a fun trip. Krokodil, otherwise known as the zombie heroin. Hey guys, before we get into the video, I gotta do the obligatory not sponsor thing because I don't got a sponsor, but I wanted to at least talk to you guys and let you guys know that I see that some of you guys that watch my videos aren't even subscribed to my channel, bro. Over 89% of people that watch my videos are not even subscribed. So if you watch my content, have watched my content in the past and are watching this video right now, and you like what I do, hit the subscribe button right down there. It's a really pretty red button. I know it's calling your name. I know you want to press it. Just press the button. And if at any point in this video you like the video and you want to support the channel, then please hit the like button as well. Leave a comment, all that junk. So with that out of the way, thanks for watching, and let's get back into the video. Now, before I can get into the what of what Krokodil is, and how it came to be, I have to go a little far into the past to talk about a progenitor drug, or rather what Krokodil used to be before it became what it became. Back in the 20s in Germany, a company known as Knoll Pharmaceuticals were looking into creating an opioid alternative to morphine. Something that was not only more powerful than morphine, but with effects that came on fast and had a shorter half-life than regular morphine, with little to no side effects. And to their credit, they were able to synthesize a semi-synthetic opioid known as desomorphine. Although, as far as we know, it didn't get that name until much later. And in 1920, it was patented by Knoll, but didn't really get any sort of recognition until 14 years later. In 1934, a man known as Lyndon Frederick Small ended up synthesizing desomorphine as well, though this time it finally got recognition, as not only was it patented in the US in 1934, but was also distributed internationally to countries like Switzerland, selling the drug under the name of Permanid. Now, you may be wondering what I meant when I said desomorphine was more powerful than regular morphine, so let me clarify that statement. When I say it was more powerful, desomorphine was basically noted as being 8 to 10 times more potent than morphine. And add to the fact that desomorphine came on pretty strong pretty quickly, and unlike morphine, didn't give you nausea like morphine or any other gnarly kind of side effect that came along with morphine. It was essentially considered a wonder drug. Or at least that's what they thought initially. Turns out the more that desomorphine was used, doctors started to notice some pretty bad side effects. While not necessarily life-threatening, they could pose some pretty bad health risks. Of the side effects that was noted, people who administered desomorphine at equianalgesic doses would notice that people would develop respiratory depression, which as a result would cause people to have severe headaches, bluish colored lips, fingers, and or toes, and could also result in seizures, which is not good. These weren't the only side effects, however, as it would not only cause hypotension, which is low blood pressure, which is not good, but also urinary retention, which causes you to not be able to pee. So yeah, with side effects like turning blue, having headaches, seizures, low blood pressure, and not being able to take a piss, which you need to do every day, yeah, it's just a cocktail of bad things you shouldn't be dealing with all at once. As a result, desomorphine was designated as a Schedule I drug in 1938, 4 years after it was synthesized and patented in the US. Basically meaning that it was not legal to sell as a prescription drug over the counter, but also illegal to have in your possession unless you are a practicing doctor, which in all honesty makes total sense. With the list of side effects as well as the short half-life of the drug's intended effects, and plenty of other opioid alternatives already available on the market, it was just deemed as unnecessary and saw fit to keep it out of the hands of the public. Although it kept seeing use as late as 1981 when the drug was finally phased out from medical practice, the last known use being for a patient in Bern, Switzerland who had a rare illness that very same year. So I know what you may be thinking, what does any of this have to do with Krokodil? Well, everything, actually. One of the countries that also saw distribution of desomorphine before banning it as well was Russia, or as they were specifically known at the time, the Soviet Union. In fact, to perfectly illustrate how Krokodil came to be, I have to give a little bit of history on how Russia ended up with its tumultuous history with the opiate epidemic. In the 80s, while the Soviet Union was still a thing, the government decided it would be in their best interest to invade a country. That country? Afghanistan. Now, while I won't go into the entire history of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, as it is too big of a topic for this video. I'm just going to give you the necessary broad strokes. It was fucking bad. It was really bad. The Soviet army had no clue what they were getting into when they invaded Afghanistan, because not only were they not used to the very hot climate of Afghanistan, and considering Russia is known for its more colder climate, yeah, it wasn't great for morale. What also didn't help was the mountainous terrain of Afghanistan, which was something the army wasn't used to fighting in. So the moment the guns came out, they were at a complete disadvantage. There's a reason Afghanistan is known as the place empires go to die. Also keep in mind, this was still in the era of the Cold War, so when the CIA caught wind of this invasion going on, the CIA did what the CIA does, and not only assisted the Afghani rebels in how to fight and train them in the use of guerrilla warfare, but also gave them a shit ton of guns. Yeah. I'm not gonna get too political and give my thoughts on what I think of the CIA. After all, I don't want to be unalived in Minecraft for speaking badly about our own government three-letter organizations. So all I'll say is the CIA has made a good amount of precarious decisions over the years that bit us in the ass years down the road. Yeah. Point is, this was very bad for the Soviet Union, especially for those who fought in the conflict. So when the troops were ordered to pull out due to their spectacular failure in being able to make any ground in Afghanistan, and by the time 1991 came, the Soviet Union collapsed, which we could all thank Metallica for. Jokes aside, the morale of the country was at an all-time low. Not only that, but as a result, the economy completely collapsed, crime was at an all-time high, and the collapse of the Soviet Union created a power vacuum that resulted in multiple wars with the former surrounding Soviet Russian countries, such as Chechnya, Georgia, Bosnia, Kosovo, and many more, making Russia an even more of a crappy place to live during this time period. And with morale at an all-time low, what do people turn to when they're depressed and hating life? Well, they turn to recreational pursuits, of course. And when I say recreational pursuits, I mean dope. Copious consumption of dope. Now, while the details are a little murky regarding this topic, it is considered the reason that Russia ended up as one of the highest consumers of heroin was as retaliation by Afghanistan due to the invasion. What do I mean? Well, for those who don't know, Afghanistan is considered one of the biggest producers and exporters of poppy plants. Poppy plants is what is used to make opiates and opioids. And opiates are used to make heroin. I think you know where I'm going with this. Basically, it's believed that as a way to get back at Russia, Afghanistan decided to, in the graciousness of their hearts, decided to export poppy plants to Russia. And knowing their morale was low, they knew by doing so would encourage those severely impacted by low morale to consume drugs made from these poppy plants. Basically heroin. The goal being to weaken their population as a result. I can't tell you how effective this actually was, but considering that Russia is still dealing with the heroin epidemic nearly 40 years later, yeah, it's a fucking problem. Now, with all that out of the way, I think it's about time that we get into Krokodil. Especially how it came to be. Now, like I mentioned earlier, when the Soviet Union collapsed, the economy was just trashed, and while there was copious amounts of dope floating around, the problem, especially for those who are really poor, good dope commands a premium. And in a crappy economy, obviously not everyone could afford it. So what happens when there's plenty of supply and plenty of demand? but not everyone can afford it. Well, people come up with cheaper alternatives. It's not really known when Krokodil was first conceived of or who conceived it, but we do know what it's made with. Now, for full disclosure, I want to make this crystal clear. Before I continue, if you couldn't tell just by the tone of this video, the purpose of this video is to discourage drug use. So if you think you're going to get any smart ideas and consider even making Krokodil in your bathtub to get super duper high, don't. And I'm going to explain to you why. So what is Krokodil exactly? Well, Krokodil is just homemade desomorphine. Now, that may not sound that bad, but considering the fact it has copious side effects that desomorphine causes, keep that in mind, because it all goes down... Shit. It all goes downhill from here, baby. Now, you may have the obvious question of how was Krokodil even made? Now, for my channel's safety, as well as the safety of others, I'm not going to provide you detailed instructions on how this was made, as that's not the purpose of this video, and even if I did, the chances of being able to get certain ingredients nowadays have become massively more harder for even those to consider doing that. So in the end, it just wouldn't be worth the hassle. However, I will tell you the ingredients that were used and the broad general process that would be required to synthesize the drug in a home environment. I don't know how someone figured this out, but apparently someone discovered that it was possible to synthesize homemade desomorphine through the use of codeine. Now, for those who don't live under a rock, you probably have heard one of your favorite rappers talking about sipping on lean. A rapper started sipping cough syrup out of a cup. This is what happened to his brain.
Like, I be kind of flowing when I be high. You know what I'm saying? Like, it gets me high. You know what I'm saying? I just float, like, in a good mood. You know, I want to be bothered, because I really don't like being bothered, period. You know what I'm saying? I got a real attitude problem. Like, I don't like being bothered. Like, I'm kind of alone, and like, I be to myself. Like,
which is basically codeine, cough syrup, and Sprite. Codeine, for those who are unaware, is an opiate that is mainly used to treat not only pain, but also coughing. Back then, it was pretty easy to get your hands on, as it was initially an over-the-counter drug. But at this point, considering Big Pharma and the government were getting wise to the fact that people were just using it to get high, well, they did something about it. So now codeine, whether it's in the cough syrup form or in codeine phosphate tablets, now require a prescription, and it's not cheap. Now, that's not to say that there aren't over-the-counter drugs you can get today that do contain codeine, though, however, usually comes in very low doses and are usually paired with other ingredients alongside it, basically meaning if you wanted to get high off of codeine, you would essentially have to OD yourself with these over-the-counter drugs, which is not ideal, or have access to a drug lab to extract the codeine from said medicines. And needless to say, most people don't have access to such equipment or have the knowledge to be able to do so, and it would be such a huge time sink that it just wouldn't even be worth it. However, back in Russia, you could easily and cheaply get certain over-the-counter meds that contained a good amount of codeine in them, without a lot of the other unnecessary ingredients alongside it, such as Caffetin, a drug that is sold as a caffeine tablet that also treats pain and cough. And from this medicine, you would use as a base to make homemade desomorphine, but you did also need other ingredients. Another ingredient that was required was iodine, which you could also get through over-the-counter medications, but you also needed red phosphorus, which you can easily get from matches. You know, the red part that lights on fire when you strike the match? Yeah, that stuff. But not only that, you would also need hydrochloric acid, paint thinner, lighter fluid, and gasoline. In the business, we call this foreshadowing. Once you have all your ingredients, Essentially, you would just throw them all in a pot, bringing it to a boil and letting it cook for at least an hour. And once you were done, essentially you would have the liquid that was remaining that was essentially desomorphine. Put it in a needle and you know the rest. And like pure desomorphine, it had the same effects. 8 to 10 times more powerful than just morphine, but with a shorter half-life. So, what's the catch? Well, believe it or not, aside from the obvious side effects I mentioned earlier on in the video that desomorphine causes, if it was cooked properly, which allowed the byproducts to evaporate completely and inject it properly, there really wasn't a catch. However, because most normal people aren't expert chemists, and considering the people who are taking this stuff were not in the best frame of mind, there were plenty of cases where people cooked this stuff improperly. So, what happens when you inject yourself with Krokodil that was prepared poorly? Now, this is the part of the video where I suggest to those who have a weak stomach to go down the chapter selection down below and skip to the next part of this video, because what I'm going to show you is some images of the effects that injecting poorly made Krokodil will do the human body. Now, the images I'm going to show have been slightly altered just so I can avoid getting this video an age restriction, because these images can be pretty distressing. And even then, these aren't even the worst ones. Believe me when I say, when doing research for this video, some of the images I've seen of the effects that it causes made me almost lose my lunch. So without further ado, you've been warned. So, what does improperly made Krokodil do to the body? Well, simply put, it causes necrosis to whatever body part received the point of injection, and that's if you improperly did it. Because if you were to properly inject this crap into your veins, it could be even worse, affecting more parts of your body at once. Now, for those who are wondering what necrosis is, well, you'll have images to show you what that is, but let me explain it for you. Necrosis is what happens when the cells in your flesh start to die. So essentially what this crap is doing to you is killing off parts of your flesh, eating you from the inside out, causing symptoms such as gangrene, open sores and wounds, scaly skin, and even causing parts of the body to shrivel and turn black due to the necrosis, if untreated. In fact, the reason the drug got its name Krokodil, which is the Russian word for crocodile, was given the name because most people who witnessed the effects on the body it has noticed that the skin would turn green and scaly like a crocodile. Hence the name. However, I feel one of the names that suits it best is Zombie Heroin, because of the fact it causes its users' flesh to rot, making its users look like zombies. So while they might not literally be acting like flesh-eating zombies, they sure look the part. The effects of this drug is so deadly and gruesome that even if you got treated, the reality was most people who took the drug after the first use were expected to only live for 2 to 3 years. The effect of the drug is so terrifying that even heroin addicts were noted for saying that even they wouldn't even consider using it and would rather save the extra money just so they could buy heroin. Because, you know, the one thing that heavy drug addicts are well known for is standards. I joke, of course, but you know your drug is horrifying when even heavy drug users would rather go through withdrawal than even consider its use. So it begs the question, why the fuck would anyone consider even using this drug? Well, it's for the same reason that most people turn to hard drugs. To have an escape from reality and their own problems. Add to the fact that the economy of Russia was absolute crap during this time, and the local geopolitical conflicts going on, and just overall terrible quality of life, it would cause those with very little hope for the future to make even the worst of decisions. What also didn't help the situation was the fact that Krokodil's half-life was so short, it caused those who got hooked to the drug to essentially make Krokodil their full-time job. Essentially doing nothing but looking all over for whatever bits of scrap they can find and sell, just so they could scrounge up enough dosh to buy the ingredients they needed and make Krokodil day after day. And usually this constant cycle would usually end with someone making a bad batch. And you know all the rest. And things would stay that way for a while to come. So, the question that may be on everyone's mind right now, is it still being made and used today? Short answer, no. At least for the most part. Long answer, Krokodil use has pretty much died off. Partly due to the fact that in 2011, Russia's Federal Drug Control Service had a meeting in regards to the media attention it was getting in the decade and a half it would start being used, expressing the concerns of how easy it was for people to get their hands on ingredients and how easy it was to produce this stuff. And to combat this, the government took action by restricting access to products that contained codeine in them in 2012. While this didn't completely kill off Krokodil use initially, it did in the long term, though, discourage those wise enough to go seek other alternatives and be more responsible and safer drug addicts. Also, oddly enough, Krokodil for a short time actually made its way to the US, causing a mini epidemic since at least 2004 up until 2013. However, by July of 2019, the US Drug Enforcement Agency has since reported that they haven't identified any recent uses of the drug since their initial reports. And considering that drug pushers themselves wouldn't even dare to make or even sell the stuff, considering their goal is to hook their customers on drugs, not kill them, chances are, with the info also floating around freely on the internet about Krokodil, nobody's even considering making this stuff anymore. And with that, that's pretty much the history of Krokodil, its origins, what it does, and ultimately its demise. And I know what some people may ask, why make this video? Where's the next anime hole video, for God's sakes? You thought I forgot about you guys. Don't worry, I'm actually working on the next one. But yeah, why make this video? Well, for two reasons. The first reason being that I was fascinated by this topic. I learned about this drug since high school, and just the thought of taking a drug that eats you alive was just something that both horrified me and perplexed me. I always wondered how a drug like this even came to be. Why would anyone even use a drug like this? Being the curious cat that I am, I wanted to know why, and what I found was very interesting, so I thought I would make this video. The second, if you couldn't tell by the tone of this video, was to discourage heavy drug use. Now, I'll take a step back for a second to say I'm no saint. I have my own vices. For example, I have a nicotine addiction. Also, I love to drink. And I've also done my share of cocaine. In fact, you're probably watching this video and you have some sort of vice that you are addicted to as well. So take it from me when I say I am not here to tell you what to do. I'm not your fucking daddy who's gonna spank your ass for doing a bad thing. That's not my job here. And I think you might be able to relate to the ye old days of elementary school and the DARE program when Danny the Lion, or whatever his name was, would tell you to just say no. It didn't work then, and it doesn't work now. If anyone wants to get fucked up on drugs, no sort of ad campaign telling you what not to do isn't gonna do a damn thing. But there's a line. A fine line between having a vice and having a monster on your back that is literally controlling your life. I thought I would get serious for a second and actually tell a story about a friend I used to have. I will not be saying his name to protect his privacy and his identity. I had this close friend back in the day, back in Portland, Oregon, when I was still living there. We worked at a Safeway, and he worked at a Starbucks kiosk. For some context as well, I was not in the healthiest state of mind myself, by the way. However, we hit it off, and we had some common interests. We were into music, video games, all that kind of stuff. And next thing we knew, we became very, very close friends. His girlfriend at the time would talk to me at times about how when they were together alone, he would mention my name a lot. And, clearly it meant that I meant a lot to him. He also believed in my dreams that I actually disclosed to him. He was very, very, very supportive of a lot of the goals that I wanted to reach, and he was a fucking great guy. I loved him to death. One of his goals was to be a professional musician. And I even got to see him play live. In fact, I actually got to see a performance he did one time at, I think it was an open mic. And it was a one-man show. Essentially, he was just playing with a guitar on stage. It was like a white guy with a guitar kind of situation, and he was singing some of the songs he wrote. Before he even went on stage, though, because like I was with him, his girlfriend, some other friends, and I remember he was just talking to me. He's like, dude, I'm so fucking nervous, man. Like, I hope I don't fuck it up. And I'm like, bro, it's okay. You're gonna do fine. Just go up there and fucking kill it. You're gonna do fine. And before he went on stage, or as he was announced to get on stage, he as he was walking to the stage, he took his guitar off, because he had it wrapped around him. He took it off, and then he just took his clothes off, minus his underwear. He kept that on, thankfully. Although if he could, he probably would have taken that off too. He just got on stage naked, essentially, playing his songs, and fucking killed it. He did a great job. Like, he did a really, really great job. I actually admired how brave he was. I admired how brave he was despite how nervous he was. Because you couldn't tell. You would have had no idea that he was that nervous unless you heard it from him yourself. Then one day, I was working at Safeway at the time. I was pulled into the back room. I had someone, one of my coworkers was like, "Hey, you got a moment?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." Took me to the back room, and he was one of the coworkers that knew him as well. He was good friends with a lot of people, and he told me he died. That he was found in his bedroom at night, deceased, and that just devastated me entirely. But I was also curious. I'm like, how the fuck did he die? How did he die? I just couldn't think of a reason. I thought maybe he killed himself, maybe something else happened, maybe he had a heart problem. I don't know. I had no clue. Then I talked to his girlfriend later that night. I called her up. I'm like, I heard what happened. I want to talk to you. And she's like, okay, you can meet me later around here. You can meet me here or when you get off at this time. And she told me that the way he died was actually before he told me how he died, she told me that he was a heroin addict, which just blew my fucking mind because I had no clue. I had no clue at all. Apparently he was like that for a while. But he never told me. He never told me that he was a heroin addict. He never told me because apparently, according to her, our relationship meant so much. He cared about our friendship so much that he didn't even want to dare risk changing the dynamic of a friendship because of that knowledge. And so he didn't tell me. He didn't even risk it. And so I asked her, like, did he overdose? Like, what happened? It was actually worse than that. That night he died, he had three baggies of heroin. Two were clean cut, and one was tainted. Guess which one he took? Apparently, according to his girlfriend, the last person he called as he was dying due to the tainted heroin was his mother. And apparently, he didn't have a good relationship with his parents at all because he was raised to be super religious and he didn't agree with it. And apparently, they kicked him out. And apparently, they just were not supportive at all. And the fact that he called his mom as he was dying, and sad part is they never returned his call. It just fucking kills me. It really kills me to know that. It really does. Now, I'm sorry. I know I got super serious on you for a few minutes there, but I had to tell that story because I needed to make a point. That is what heroin did to my best friend. He was so addicted to heroin that some asshole sold him a badly cut baggie of heroin that just killed him before he even managed to make it to 30. Before he could even make anything of his dream. He's just fucking dead. That's what heroin did to him. Now take heroin and replace that with Krokodil. Just imagine the walking, talking corpses that are literally being eaten away from the inside out. Living with limbs and flesh that are rotting to the bone. Just to get a high that makes them forget about their problems just for a few hours. Where their... Shut up! Where their existence is literally nothing but making dope all day, every day, just to feed an addiction. That's just horrifying. So if this video at least did one thing right, hopefully it discouraged those from... It discouraged the smartest of you, or most of you even, from even considering taking hard drugs. Whether it's heroin, meth, coke, crack, PCP, bath salts, fairy dust, unicorn farts. It doesn't matter. Like, hopefully this gives you a reality check and brings you down to earth. Because believe me, with no matter how hopeless, depressing, and awful life can seem, there is green grass on the other side. Stay safe, my friends.